What if you could build a colossal ring around a star, a world so vast it could hold trillions of humans? And what if doing so changed the entire course of history? Before we step into this mind-bending journey, take a quick moment to like this video, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you are truly ready to dive into the impossible. Now let us begin. Imagine standing at the edge of an endless plain, where the horizon curves upward until it disappears into the heavens. The ground beneath you is not a planet. It is the inner surface of a megastructure circling an entire star. This is the concept of a ring world, first brought to life in science fiction, but rooted in physics and human imagination. It is the ultimate playground for a question we love to ask: what if? In this journey, you won't just observe, you will step into the story. You will decide how civilizations rise or collapse. You will feel the weight of choices about survival, power, and meaning. And sometimes we will laugh together because even in a world built by gods or engineers, humans are still humans. We argue over food, memes, and whether pineapple belongs on pizza. So buckle up, because from this moment forward, we are not just talking about history as it was, we are reshaping history as it could have been. Close your eyes for a moment and picture a structure so large it makes Earth look like a pebble. A ring world would circle an entire star at roughly the same distance Earth orbits the Sun, forming a gigantic band millions of miles across. The inside surface would provide more living space than thousands of Earths combined. For science fiction writers, this was the ultimate fantasy canvas, but for scientists, it was also a mind-bending thought experiment. The idea first took shape in the 1970s when author Larry Niven popularized it in his novel Ringworld. But the seed had been planted earlier by physicist Freeman Dyson, who imagined civilizations capturing all the energy of a star by building massive structures around it. We call them Dyson spheres, but a ring world is even stranger. It is not just an energy collector, it is a place you could call home. Think about what this means. No more cramped cities or overpopulation. Instead, humanity could spread across landscapes so vast they would make the Great Plains of America look like a backyard garden. Rivers could stretch for millions of miles. Mountains might rise so tall they would pierce the artificial sky. And of course, there'd be the question of who gets the beachfront property, when the beach itself could circle a star. But behind the wonder lies a shadow. To build such a structure, humanity would need to dismantle entire planets for raw material. Imagine tearing apart Mercury or Mars, breaking them down to create the ring. What would it say about us as a species if we were willing to destroy worlds in order to build one of our own? The dream of the ring world is not just about science, it is about who we are and how far we would go to shape the universe in our image. Now let us play with history. Imagine if humanity had somehow discovered or built a ring world not in the far future, but thousands of years ago. Picture ancient civilizations, Egyptians, Greeks, Chinese dynasties, suddenly lifted from their deserts and valleys and placed upon a band circling a star. How would their stories unfold? The Egyptians, who worshipped the sun as Ra, would find themselves literally living inside its eternal embrace. The pyramids, once monuments to eternity, would now stand beneath a sky that never truly darkened, their purpose redefined as gateways to the infinite. Priests might claim that the ring world itself was the body of Ra, a divine gift that only their people could interpret. Meanwhile, the Greeks, fascinated by geometry and philosophy, would treat the ring world as the ultimate mathematical riddle. Imagine Aristotle trying to explain gravity when down no longer points to the center of the earth, but to the spinning curve of a gigantic ring. Imagine Socrates asking whether virtue still exists if the gods themselves can be reached just by climbing high enough on a mountain that never ends. And let us not forget Rome. The Romans were masters of engineering, roads, and aqueducts. On a ring world, their empire might stretch not across continents, but across millions of miles. Instead of all roads lead to Rome, they might boast all roads lead around the star. The political games, the betrayals, the spectacles of the Colosseum, now multiplied 1,000-fold on a cosmic stage. But history is fragile. Technology that advanced too quickly often bred chaos. If humanity had the power to dismantle planets in ancient times, wars could erupt not over provinces, but over entire orbital sectors. One miscalculation, one rebellion, and the ring itself could crack, sending civilizations tumbling into the void. So the question for you is this: if you had been born into such a history, would you cling to tradition, worshipping the ring as divine, or would you embrace reason, seeking to master its mechanics before it destroyed you? History teaches us one brutal lesson: wherever there is abundance, there is also conflict. On a ring world, where resources stretch beyond imagination, the stakes would not get smaller, they would get infinitely larger. Imagine empires not just fighting over fertile valleys or gold mines, but over entire orbital sectors the size of continents. Picture an ancient king declaring himself lord of the Eastern Arc, demanding tribute from millions who live along a curve of land stretching farther than the Silk Road. Now imagine his rival on the Western Arc, gathering armies of equal strength. When these two powers clash, their wars would not just scar nations. They could scar the ring itself, leaving fractures in a megastructure that supports trillions of lives. And in such a world, betrayal would take on cosmic proportions. A general who switches sides might not just doom a city, he could doom entire orbital regions. Imagine the Roman Senate arguing not about taxation in Gaul, but about whether to divert a river that stretches 1,000,000 miles, potentially flooding thousands of settlements. Suddenly, politics becomes not just a matter of survival, but of planetary engineering. But humans are humans, and even in this vastness, petty squabbles would remain. Someone would still cheat at games. Someone would still steal a neighbor's goat, or maybe their orbital farmland. And you can bet, somewhere on the ring, two brothers would still fight over who gets to sit on the family throne. Trillions of square miles, and somehow we would still find reasons to argue about Thanksgiving dinner. The ring world would magnify both our brilliance and our flaws. It would test whether humanity could cooperate on a cosmic scale, or whether we would simply bring our old grudges to a new stage. And here's the terrifying question: what happens when war does not just burn cities, but burns holes in the very world that holds you up? Let us get practical for a moment. If you woke up tomorrow on a ring world, how would you survive? Forget about kings and empires. Your first question would be, can I even breathe here? A ring world would need a carefully engineered atmosphere. Too thin and you would suffocate. Too thick and the heat would cook you alive. Scientists suggest that an atmosphere might be contained by walls thousands of miles high at the edges of the ring, acting like cosmic fences to keep the air from spilling into space. Imagine standing at the foot of such a wall. It would rise so far into the sky that clouds themselves would crash against it like waves against a cliff. And then there is gravity. A ring world does not have a planet's core to pull you down. Instead, the whole structure would spin, creating centrifugal force that feels like gravity. Walk across the surface and down would always point outward, away from the star, while up would point toward the blazing sun at the center. It is weird, it is counterintuitive, and it means that climbing a mountain could literally bring you closer to the sun. Food and water would also be engineered. Rivers might stretch for millions of miles, carefully routed to keep ecosystems alive. Forests could cover entire sectors, producing oxygen and feeding billions. But survival would not just be about farming, it would be about maintenance. If a single crack appeared in the structure, an entire region could lose its atmosphere overnight. Imagine going to sleep in your home and waking up in the vacuum of space because a careless engineer forgot to tighten a bolt. Now here's the fun part: survival games. Picture yourself stranded in a broken sector, the air leaking away, the artificial sun overhead blazing too hot. Do you try to reach the next arc by foot? Do you build shelter from scraps of fallen metal? Or do you gamble everything and attempt to signal the central command, assuming they even care about people living out on the edges? So ask yourself, in a world this massive, would survival depend more on technology or on sheer human stubbornness? Because let us be honest, humans have survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. Put us on a ring world, and sure, we would panic, but someone would still open a food truck and start selling tacos by the million-mile highway. If humans lived on a ring world, our stories, our gods, and our very sense of meaning would be rewritten. Culture does not just grow from survival. It grows from the landscapes we inhabit. And no landscape would be stranger than a ring stretching around a star. Imagine a religion that worships the central sun not as a distant god, but as a visible, blazing heart always in the sky. Pilgrimages might involve walking across millions of miles toward the closest point to the star, believing that the higher you climb, the closer you are to salvation. Entire myths could form around the walls at the edges of the ring, seen not as engineering marvels, but as divine boundaries between the mortal world and the infinite void. New art would flourish as well. Painters would capture horizons that curve upward into the heavens. Architects might build cities designed to echo the curve of the ring itself, turning geometry into spirituality. And poets, oh poets would have a field day, comparing love not to the stars above, but to the endless arc of land beneath one's feet. But myths would not all be beautiful. Fear would grow too. Imagine living in a place where you can look up and see lands thousands of miles above you, hanging there like a second sky. Some cultures might believe those upper lands are homes of the gods, or perhaps cursed realms where only the dead can walk. Children might grow up with bedtime stories warning them never to look too long, lest the people above look back. And of course, humor would evolve too. On Earth, we say, the sky's the limit. On a ring world, the joke might be, which sky, the one above you, or the one under your feet. Stand-up comedians would probably still make fun of politicians, though now they would joke about the emperor of the Eastern Arc accidentally declaring war on the wrong horizon. Culture on a ring world would be vast, diverse, and strange. It would echo our human need to create meaning, but it would also reveal how fragile our stories are when the stage itself changes. And maybe, just maybe, some of those myths would feel more true than what we believe today. Every great story needs a moment of danger, and in the case of a ring world, the danger is unimaginable. Picture this: you are living peacefully in your sector, farming by the light of the ever-present star, when suddenly the ground trembles. At first you think it is just an earthquake, but then the horizon shifts, and a crack appears in the sky above. The truth hits you: this is not a planet. It is a fragile machine, and machines can fail. The ring world begins to fracture. An entire arc starts to buckle under its own weight. Entire cities fall into darkness as power systems collapse. Rivers, once steady and endless, pour into the void like cosmic waterfalls. What would you do if you were there? Would you run for the edge, hoping the great retaining walls could keep you safe? Would you gather your family and try to reach the next sector, praying that the ring's builders had planned for emergencies? Or would you do nothing, paralyzed, staring at the sun as your entire world begins to fold inward? History tells us that disasters do not just test our strength, they test our values. Would leaders try to unite humanity, or would they fight to control the last safe regions of the ring? Imagine a war not for power, but for survival, where entire civilizations gamble their future on patches of land held together by steel beams. And let us not ignore the absurd, because even in apocalypse, humans are still ridiculous. Somewhere on the collapsing ring, there would still be someone arguing about whose turn it is to do the dishes, even as the sky literally falls apart. But the collapse would be more than physical, it would be cultural. Myths that once saw the ring as divine would be shattered. Faith in eternal paradise would crumble with the walls. In that chaos, new prophets might rise, claiming the collapse was Judgment Day, while engineers scramble to explain it as faulty maintenance. So here's the question for you: if the ring world fell apart before your eyes, would you cling to faith or trust in science, or maybe, just maybe, would you choose laughter as the last defense against the end of everything? So what does all of this mean for us today? We may never build a ring world, at least not in our lifetime. The engineering challenges alone are staggering. Tearing apart planets, harnessing star-sized energy, and maintaining a structure larger than imagination. But the value of this thought experiment is not in whether we can do it. It is in what it reveals about us. Every time we imagine worlds beyond Earth, we are also imagining new versions of humanity. On a ring world, we saw how our religions, our politics, and even our jokes would change. But at the core, what stayed constant, our drive to survive, our hunger for meaning, our endless ability to argue over food. These are the threads that tie us together, no matter what world we call home. In a way, we are already building our own ring worlds. Every time we create global networks, every time we expand into space with satellites and space stations, every time we talk about colonizing Mars, we are testing how far we can stretch the boundaries of human cooperation. The ring world may be fiction, but the instinct behind it, the urge to create something bigger than ourselves, is very real. So here's the final question I will leave you with. If you had the chance to shape the destiny of humanity on a structure that could outlive stars themselves, what kind of civilization would you build? Would it be ruled by faith, by science, by art, or by laughter, or maybe by all of them at once? Thank you for joining me on this journey through history, science, and imagination. If you enjoyed it, let me know in the comments what kind of ring world culture you would choose to live in. Or tell me what if scenario you want to explore next. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with a friend who loves bending history and science as much as you do. Until next time, keep wondering, because the universe is stranger than we can ever imagine.